Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're breaking down Dr. Julius Karimi-Sindi's analysis of a massive shift in global health diplomacy, one that could fundamentally change the game for the African continent for the next 25 years.
So let's just set the scene here, because this isn't some hypothetical. The analysis makes it clear this is what's happening on the ground for many African nations right now. They're facing these intense, high-pressure negotiations with an incredibly tight deadline to sign deals with consequences that last for decades.
Okay, let's get into it. We're talking about the new America First Global Health Strategy. Now, some analysts are seeing this as part of a bigger play for geopolitical influence. U.S. teams are basically trying to lock in these one-on-one health agreements with at least 16 African nations, and they want it all done before the end of this year. So yeah, the clock is absolutely ticking, and the stakes could not be higher. Now, on the surface, the whole pitch is about making things more efficient and giving countries more local control. But when you start to look at the fine print of the deal that's actually on the table, a really stark imbalance starts to show up. And it raises some pretty fundamental questions about what's fair and what's equitable. So this is the crucial point, this massive gap. African governments are being asked to hand over sensitive health and pathogen data for a quarter of a century. And in return, the U.S. is only committing to 5 years of funding. You know, the analysis puts it perfectly. It's like signing a 25-year mortgage in exchange for a 5-year lease on the cash. And when you really break down the exchange, it gets even clearer. On one side of the ledger, you've got these concrete, incredibly valuable long-term assets, 25 years of pathogen data, at-will access to digital health records. And on the other side, well, you've got a much shorter-term funding promise with absolutely no binding commitment to share the life-saving vaccines or treatments that are developed from that very data. And that right there, that quote, just brilliantly illustrates the core risk. African nations could be providing the biological blueprints for the next huge medical breakthrough, only to find themselves at the very back of the line, having to pay full market price for the exact innovations they helped create. So this brings up a really critical question, right? Why are these deals being negotiated one-on-one? Well, this move away from working through established global bodies seems to be a central part of the whole strategy, and it has some pretty profound implications. For decades, the approach has been multilateral, usually through organizations like the World Health Organization, and that allowed African nations to negotiate as one big bloc, giving them a collective voice and shared leverage. This new shift to bilateral talks, it completely dismantles that power. It isolates each country, and it just amplifies the power imbalance that's already there. And it really makes you wonder, what's the future role for global bodies like the WHO if major players can just go around them? And look, the fallout from this kind of strategy goes way beyond the continent. This approach really threatens the very foundation of global cooperation that we all depend on. A fragmented system where data and benefits aren't shared fairly, it makes everyone more vulnerable when the next pandemic inevitably shows up. Okay, but to be fair, the analysis makes it clear this strategy isn't all bad. There are some potential benefits here, but, and this is a big but, they really depend on how these deals get negotiated. The key phrase is, if negotiated well, there is continued funding for absolutely essential programs, there's some genuinely useful tech transfer, like drone delivery networks. There's a real opportunity here to use these negotiations to build stronger, more self-reliant health systems, maybe even local manufacturing. So these agreements could be transformed from extractive deals into real partnerships. So the big question is, how can African nations turn the tables and actually seize that opportunity? Well, the analysis lays out a very clear, proactive playbook for taking back control in these conversations. And this is really the core of the path forward. First, ignore that 72-hour clock. Resist the deadline. Second, even if the talks are one-on-one, the strategy doesn't have to be. Nations can and should share information and form a united front. Third, define metrics that actually measure real health improvements for people, not just bureaucratic checkmarks. And finally, demand that reciprocity for data isn't just a vague promise. It has to be a binding, enforceable part of any deal, period. Ultimately, Dr. Sindi's analysis makes it crystal clear that this is about so much more than just one set of agreements. This is a defining moment. It's a call for a new, more equitable global health order, one that's built on African unity, real data sovereignty, and self-reliance. It's a chance for the continent to use its most valuable resources, not just minerals, but its health data, to build a future where it stands as a truly equal partner in global health. So, what's the answer?
Well, it hasn't been written yet. It all comes down to whether strategic, collective African action can reshape the terms of the deal. This is more than just a test of diplomacy. It's a test that's going to define the future of health on the continent and really the nature of global solidarity for decades to come.